Dzień dobry. My name is Panny. Gosha mentioned there are participants from 18 countries. Actually, there should be 19. I'm Chinese. I'm from China. I moved to Poland 5 years ago. Now I work in Nokia. Okay, to start, let me take you back to 2008. It was summer in city Chengdu, southwest of China, that time famous for the animal panda, but later in the next decade would become one of the biggest IT centers in the country. Well, and I was a fresh graduate waiting for being interviewed for a job called technical writer. I had no idea what the job was about. Nobody told me about it. No school taught about it in that time. But the company that was hiring was quite famous for selling its mobile devices all over the country, Nokia. That's why I was there. Well, I thought it must be a job for me because I wrote diaries, theses, emails, all kinds of stuff, and even newspapers for my university. I was really good at it. So I thought that was just about writing another subject, wasn't it? That's why I was hired as the fourth employee in the team, and most probably the only department for technical documentation in town in 2008. Well, at the beginning, my job was not far from my imagination. It was to take my notebook, my mobile phone, my pen, going with my team to interview the software engineers and hardware engineers. So we just jotted down what they said, most of the time in Chinese, and then we transcribed it, translated into readable English. But this process, which went quite well, only lasted for 6 months. Because after 6 months, it was the still remember dry and cold winter morning. My boss called a meeting with us. Then I would say my boss said that, come on, guys, so I have something to announce. He said it with a voice of excitement and a little bit nervousness. A decision has been made. From now on, you're going to write in a different format. We call it XML. And why we use it? It's a kind of like structured language, which can separate the data storage and the data presentation. And we hope that by using it, you no longer need to trouble yourself by the tweaks of font colors, indents, headers, footers in your Word. Okay, we thought, well, then what is the difference between that one with this one? Because before that, what we did was only put our content into Word files. We click a button, PDF, we generate the PDF files. We uploaded them to a server centrally managed by a publisher. Then the person can upload it, everything, to a portal which is used for customers. What will be the difference? Let's see the difference. This is it. So, from then on, we were going to write in this format. And then we use actually an editor, which he said that could impeccably convert our XML source files into PDFs, which were compliant with the company standard. By the way, that editor was Epic Editor, the predecessor of ArborText Editor. And we uploaded everything to our server following the same process. So, our impression, wow, that was interesting. Wait a second. You know, most of the people that time in my team, we graduated from English philology, journalism. I graduated from international trade for my master's. Was I hired to be a coder? Am I going to transform myself to be a developer? No way. But hopefully, our nervousness, our worry, and the mental resistance to any changes a human being could have were quickly removed by a series of good workshops and trainings. Until today, actually when I see the theme for SOAP this year, content as code, actually I realized one interesting thing. We've started the journey content as code ever since we adopted XML and structured content. Until today, I would say we've been close enough to call it a reality rather than a discussion subject. Let me tell you why. Let's go back to my team, 2010, 2 years later. Well, by that time, I was already the manager of the team. Okay, so something happened. We noticed with the previous production process, we had a lot of problems. What were the problems? The documents, the XML files, were in technical writers' own laptops. It was very difficult for us to maintain and manage the versioning. Probably you encountered the same problem. And it was impossible for multiple writers to write the same XML file because we had no repository centrally to manage them. And also to collect PDFs, adapt them, publish them centrally, that was time consuming. That's why we thought, let's find a solution. What we did, we searched in the market and we bought the CMS system, the most expensive one. I'm not going to say which brand. So the most expensive one, we saw that let's upload all the XML files to the CMS system. We let the CMS centrally manage the versioning, the production, and it can also even produce content into HTML and PDF and whatever you want. By this process, actually we improved our production pipeline for at least 50%. We were very happy with it. So we used this production pipeline for 2 years until 2012. We did something most of you did. We adopted data. So it was several years ago. Why we adopted data? We were hoping that having data maintained by Oasis, we could save our money from maintaining our own proprietary DTD. That was the main drive, okay? And the second, we hope that in the future, we could have the multi-vendor support for our customers, having documents produced by different companies single-sourced. So we adopted data. Well, this process also worked quite fine. But in the same year, 2012, right after we adopted data, something interesting happened. There was an interesting divergence between two kinds of products in my company: hardware and software. For hardware, it was developed in waterfall mode. If you ever know waterfall mode, then it required the documentation to be delivered once every 3 months, 4 times a year. And this process was okay. It wasn't perfect. We had room to improve. For example, still the hardware documentation team wanted to be cheaper. That's why we changed to another CMS system. And we wanted to have better multi-user support. And also we wanted to have single sourcing mechanisms better adopted into the CMS. That's why they went in that way. And their needs were later satisfied by the evolutions of CMS system itself. However, on the other hand, that's my domain. For software product, the Agile transformation brought with it challenges like continuous integration, faster delivery, once every month, and even ad hoc. It requires technical writers to be involved into the iterations as early as possible and do the incremental updates of their documents. And how could we solve the problem? This process doesn't work. All right, we thought, let's think in this way. Let's check how software was produced. Well, our software was in Java code. Well, we checked and found that they just used this kind of pipeline. They put themselves, the source code, into SVN server, a central versioning system. And they, in their developers' laptops, have this version control clients. And they configured a Jenkins job continuous integration pipeline, which could help them to produce tests, integrates, and deploys builds into their system. So we thought, XML, it's code, right? Java is code, right? Why not? It's very simple. We replaced where they put Java by our XML data. The only tweak we made was in the Jenkins. We deployed the data open to Kit, which makes the result produced to be HTML and PDF in the browsable version. And this production pipeline was proven to be very robust, which empowered us to have experienced and innovate a lot of things, which I'm going to show you. What we did. Well, we noticed that in between the XML lines, we added some JavaScript, and we animated the visual graphical elements to make it dynamic. We call it interactive graphic. Some other experiments, we added drop-down function for long tables in our documents. which could prevent users from clicking the next pages of PDF 6 times or scroll the browser bar 2 seconds. Something else. We used the conditional text in the editor in data in together with the SVN external links to be able to single source the variables of one product release. What else? We program a lot of interfaces which can convert R&D's structured content. Have you ever noticed that for software, they also use structured content like parameters, alarms? The interfaces can directly map their structured content into our XMLs. So we automated the whole process. Well, imaginations flew high, a lot of evolutions. But was it the end of the journey? No, too early. Something happened in 2017, 2 years ago. Well, our software started to seek to put themselves on cloud and in DevOps. What they did was they started to move their code to GitHub and to equip Garrett. Of course, the CI system, similar, but that get them to be able to develop even faster, produce even faster in this very popular DevOps production pipeline. Okay, we learned from the previous success, right? We followed the same strategy, nothing special, replace it. XML, data. But let's see a small tweak. Or, if I can use this one. We have writers and developers co-edit the XML files this time. We call it hybrid co-authoring mode. How do they do it? They make agreements. Technical writers, they are in charge of information architecture, content structure, language precision accuracy, output look and feel. Developers in charge of code examples, procedural details, reference information, and screenshots. What they do, they make commit changes, and whatever they change must be reviewed and approved by technical writer. We reversed our role. Only after approval, their changes can be merged into the trunk. And how do they give writers input? Then they no longer review your PDF or Word and give comments there. No, they directly go to the code, either change it, push it for review and approval, or add comments. That's the way how we work. And to give you some insider's view, I decided to invite our hero, a technical content expert in Nokia in Budapest, who was directly involved into this hybrid mode, to share his feeling.
Hello, my name is Miklos Kertész, and I am a technical communication specialist at Nokia,
Can we make the volume?
where I worked for 14 years for various products. The most important aspects of our work are: we are required to create content for more than one release at a time and to have the ability to publish a maintenance package on short notice. We cannot wait for R&D input to arrive after the development is done. Then you automate parts of content creation if possible. For example, generate configuration parameter references, sample code directly from the source code of the software product itself. And last but not least, you reuse content as much as possible. To achieve this end, we have introduced certain improvements to the way we work. We treat documentation as code. It is, after all, part of the software product, is consumed by the same customers using a GUI. This latter is made possible using a Jenkins build pipe that is based on the Dita Open Toolkit. We use Garrett for version control and code reviews. It enables us to work on several releases at a time, keeping the content separate, but still being able to cherry pick the same change to more than one release if there's a need. It is open source, reliable, and allows for R&D cooperation, co-authoring, and share reviews of the source content. That documenting development items is part of the R&D definition of done. An item is only ready when it is presented to stakeholders together with the applicable documentation. Of course, this required us to adopt a different mindset. We need to be part of the R&D teams, attending planning sessions and demos, familiarizing ourselves with methodologies and concepts such as Scrum and Scalable Agile. Working this way makes me a lot happier than I used to be. I feel more involved than in previous projects, and I can act earlier on product changes. Furthermore, I can be sure that the documentation describes the actual product, how the actual product works, and not how it was planned to work.
Well, he's happy, I am happy. Okay, now let's go on. 2019. What my team are doing. Let me share with you. In one project, we start to explore open API documents. If some of you ever worked for open API, you probably know that, in fact, the content can be automatically generated from specifications as the code by tools as Swagger. The line between content and code is definitely thinner. We don't even know where can we put the technical writers there in the open API documents. But don't worry, we're working on a new production pipeline that could help us to evolve. And in another project, also, there was a talk about AI and chatbot. But in my team, actually, we do have a project doing in that way. And we want to use chatbot for customer services. But unfortunately, the customer services team, they do not have a huge database which could feed the AI. So writers in that project, what are they doing? They are chopping the content, the existing XML data, into smaller micro content so that can be used as information nodes to feed the chatbot. That's their job. So imagine several years ago, when you wrote on paper or in Microsoft Word, you were in charge of the whole article. So you were the king. You designed the whole logic of your article. You plan a table of content. You design what sections, chapters you want. You carefully select words, sentences, paragraphs that you want to put into the article. You impose the whole reading experience to your audiences, right? And you believe that you know how to explain a topic the most efficient way. However, imagine you work in the content as code world. Your first job was to think, what could be the smallest information units I design? Second step, what kind of containers can I assign to the information units? And what would be the relationships of those information units? And the first reader of your whole artifacts is machine, either your editor or your production pipeline or the artificial intelligence engine. Why? They are smarter than you by knowing that how to resemble those information units into rating pieces, fitting for that exact user and user case. Do you still call yourself a technical writer? As a manager hiring for already 10 years? Well, I don't think so. You're an information developer, engineer, architect, user assistance designer. Okay, so as a conclusion, content as code has long started since we adopted XML and structured content. And it evolved along all these years, side by side with software trends such as Agile, Scrum, continuous integration, DevOps, cloudification, machine learning. Until today, at least in my world, content as code is not whether or not, it's how and how fast you can be. Well, I started my journey from the city at the corner of China. Now, a technical content expert and technical communications manager, also an advocate of content as code. Having already served technical content experts, over 150 of them, in 8 countries. Together, we've already accomplished more than 300 documentation projects in this software-resembled environment. Well, so, I hope I'm not alone, and I hope I will meet more of you on the road together with me. Dziękuję. Thank you, Gosha.
Thank you so much, Panny. That's quite a journey.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Questions, guys?
Please.
We have questions. We have one here, one up there.
Hi, all.
Can you? Oh, sorry.
I'm Sara from Fizai at Portugal. And one of your slides mentioned that you give screenshots for developers to take care of. So I was wondering, why did you choose to do that? And also if you have like a style guide or some instructions so that you can have a consistent look and feel throughout the documentation for screenshots.
Okay, so there are actually two questions. Why did we choose to do that? Secondly, how could we keep the consistency? First, the question, cost. You know that in the companies usually don't invest too much into documentation, but they expect us to do a lot, right? So we choose the strategy, okay, get your people into working together with us, doing the parts that they're good at. And we focus on the parts we are good at, for example, information design. That's why. And how to keep the consistency? Very easy, because all that they change must go through Garrett code review and be checked by us. And they are not allowed to touch the language part. They are only in charge of making sure the substance, like the reference information, screenshots, they're correct. And it's us who will make sure that the language is consistent. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Rafael again. Still. And I have a question. Did you train somehow your developers how they should put the insight in your repository?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Like how we train our
How?
writers.
The question is how.
Well, okay. That's not alien for them. You see, what they need to do is only to treat the XML as their Java code. What they do with their Java code, they do with the XML code, right? They log into the GitHub, they change it, they commit to Garrett code review, and everything done. And they will pass the Jenkins build result.
I was rather asking about the form and the content that
Oh.
is inside the XML files or whatever, the screenshots.
Oh, okay. Definitely we arrange trainings for them, telling them the structure of the XML. They are not expected to use the same tool as us. Now we use Oxygen, but we allow them to use the simple XML editors as long as they know that which part is the content, which part is the tag, which part they can touch, which they don't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have 3 more questions. There was one up there. Is there still? Okay, I think that we can start there because that was one of the first hands. Yep.
Hi, it's Gregory from HyperOne from Warsaw. You have mentioned that your writers work along the developers, and at the end of the process there is testing. How do you test the actual documentation, especially the code which is included by the developers?
Oh, that question is actually easy to answer because that the code must be entered after they test it.
But it's possible that it's not in line.
I'm sorry, can you, in line, sorry.
It's possible that it's not in line with the actual code and code base. So do you test? Okay,
We don't. To be honest, we don't. Technical writers, we don't. That's the reason why we do this, because we used to be given very unrealistic expectations. Maybe many of you were given. Test your documents. How do I have time to do that? I have only time to write the documents. Okay, you guys test. Only after you test, put it into our documents. We don't touch your part. You don't touch our part. Some other question?
Okay, we can afford 2 more. So we already have. Yep.
Hello, Martyna from Wrocław, information developer from Infor.
Information developer, I like the title.
I'm wondering whose actually idea was it to switch the roles? Technical writers team or developers? Because you've mentioned that there was a switch so that the technical writers now approve the review. So whose idea was it?
Whose idea was it? I think it was an idea came up and immediately agreed by every parties. I couldn't really think that who initiated that one. Sorry.
Okay, but
it's so hard to say who initiated that one. But
was the reaction of developers okay? Were they willing to?
At the beginning, a little bit difficult. Like what I said, the resistance, psychological resistance is very natural, very human. Whenever you see a change. So at the beginning it was difficult, but later they noticed that it's much better than asking them to check your Word file and comment in it or teach them how to use the comments in the PDF. which they find, it's so hard to point to the right place. So actually, they welcomed it because that's code.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question. Okay, 2 questions then.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short then. Łukasz from Electrolux, managing documentation department. You mentioned and described the process of cooperation with software developers.
Yeah.
But do you have a similar experience with industrial designers, with engineers, and product developers as well? Because I feel this is more familiar ground for software developers even to use the process itself. What about the industrial designers then?
You're right. You're absolutely right. I actually, to be honest, I've never been in charge of the hardware and industrial products documentation, so I have nothing to say there. But I know that in my company, we do have a department, and actually they chose another direction of evolving their products, for example, using augmented reality. When you work with hardware, you can actually choose that kind of a different innovation track. So I'm sorry that I can't provide insights about it. Okay.
Okay, one last question, and then coffee break.
Thank you. Ludovico again, hi. So you mentioned micro contents, right? Breaking up large sets of documentation into small bites so they can be digested by
they can be digested.
I was just wondering in practice if you could describe how that went on. Like, did you just take your whole documentation and maybe repurpose it, like chunking it? Or did you have to rewrite a lot of stuff? Do you have duplicates that you use for different medium? So you actually cannot really reuse the documentation that's designed to be all in the same topic, and you actually had to redesign everything. How did that work?
First, I apologize. There are still something that I cannot disclose at this stage, but I can say something in general to answer your question. Yes, in fact, we do notice it's not that easy to chop the content into smaller pieces with the existing data XMLs. So we are redesigning some of the content. So we do have another copy of the same content. We're not directly touching that content, but we selectively choose some of the contents that are easier to be chopped, making into micro content, and then try with this content first to feed the AI chatbot, and then to see if later we can expand it to bigger scope.
Okay, that was the last question. Thank you, Panny, so much for the journey and all the experience.